There it is. All right. And okay. So Laura, are you out here or are you just visiting? Oh, that's great. Where do you live? Oh, very nice. Very, very nice. How'd you hear about it? Oh, that's nice. Who? Oh, I love that. Sure. They're both lovely, lovely people. Max and Emerson both having their bar mitzvah in very short order, but they're just incredible kids. Really, really, really wonderful. Yeah, very, very sweet people. And Allie I've known since I got here. Actually, it's now, I don't know, 8 years ago, something like that. So good me. Howard, good to see you. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos. Okay, so let's get started. We're on page 186. Yours. That's a good practice for sure. Page 186. Trying to get it. Modeh ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam. Modeh ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam. Modeh ani Father, thanks to you, Adonai, ever living sovereign, you have restored my soul to the mercy. How great is your trust? Turn now to page 192 at the very top, Matovu. Turn to page 194, blessing for our bodies.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher yatzar et ha'adam b'chokhmah uvaravo nikavim chalulim galui veyadzua לפני כיסא כבודך, שאם יפתח אחד מהם, או יסתם אחד מהם, אי אפשר להתקיים, ולעמוד לפניך, ברוך אתה אדוני רופא כל בשר.
And turn to page 196, a prayer for our souls.
Elohai, Elohai, neshama, shenatata bi tevorai, ata berata, ata yitzarta, אתה נפחת בי, ואתה משמרה בקרבי. אלוהי, אלוהי, נשמה, שנתת בי
We'll turn now to page 198, and we'll rise in body or spirit. We sing the Holy. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan l'safri bina lafkin meyom v'layla.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam רוקח עברים.
Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם זוקף כיפופים.
Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam rokah haaretz al hamayim.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם המכין מצעדי גבר.
Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish arukim.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם הנותן ליעד כוח.
Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamavir sheina meinai u'tuma me'apapai.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שעשני בצלם אלוהים.
Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani ben chorin.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שעשני ישראל.
Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozer Israel b'gvura.
אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם עוזר ישראל עוטר ישראל בתפארה.
Amen. Please be seated. We're now on page 205. We'll read together the second reading down from the top in English. From the cowardice that shrinks from new truth, from the laziness that is content with half-truths, from the arrogance that thinks it knows all truth, O God of truth, deliver us. Blessed is Adonai, teacher of Torah to your people Israel. Baruch ata Adonai, hamelamed Torah l'amo Yisrael. Page 206. Elu devarim she'en lahem shiur, she'adam ochel proteihem ba'olam hazeh, ve'akeren kayemet lo le'olam haba, ve'elu hei, yibud avaim u'gmilut chasadim, ve'hashamat beit hamidrash shacharit ve'aravit, ve'haknasat orchim u'bikur chorim, והכנסת כלה והטמאת ועיון תפילה, והבעת שלום בין אדם לחברו, ותלמוד תורה כנגד כולם. We're now to page 212 and we'll rise for the opening blessing of the Zukei Zimra at the top of the page. Baruch shehamar v'haya haolam baruch hu. Baruch Oseh Bereshit.
Baruch Omer ve'oseh.
Baruch Ozer u'mekayem.
Baruch merachem al haaretz.
Baruch merachem al habriot.
Baruch meshalem sachar tov lireah.
Baruch halat v'kayam lanetzach.
Baruch podeh u'matzil. Baruch shemo.
Mishpachot u'zmirot negadelcha. ונשבח חנפיך ונזכיר שמך ונמליכך מלכנו אלוהינו יחיד חיי העולמים מלך משובח ומפואר ביד שמו הגדול ברוך אתה אדוני מלך מהולל בתשבחות. Please be seated. We're now on page 214. טוב להודות לאדוני טוב ולזמן לשמך להגיד בבוקר חסדך להגיד בבוקר חסדך ואמונתך בלילות ואמונתך עלי אסור ועלי נבל עלי היגיון בכינור כי שימחתני אדוני בפועלך במעשה ידיך רננה מה גדול מעשיך היה מאוד מחשבותיך מה Hallelujah. 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 We're on page 218, Psalm 150.
Hallelujah. 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 Hallelujah, birkia uzo, Hallelujah, bigevorotav, Hallelujah, kerogudo, Hallelujah, Hallelujah. Hallelujah, take a shofar. Hallelujah, benevetinor. Hallelujah, topu machor. Hallelujah, beninim beuga. Hallelujah. Hallelujah, betzitele shama. Hallelujah, betzitele trua. Kol haneshama te hallelujah. Kol haneshama te hallelujah.
Nishmat kol echai, tevarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu. You silently on page 219. Now on page 220 at the very top. Eloheinu maleh shirakayam, Ulshonenu rina kamon galam, Vesiptotenu sheva kemarketenu yam, Veineu leirot kashemesh, v'chaya ve'yadeinu prusot kenishrei shamayim ve'ragleinu kalot k'ayim. Nothing must be king Now on page 222, the second paragraph down from the top in Hebrew. Shochenad maharon kadosh kelo v'chatur alim tzadikim barona v'sham Befi sharim titan titan ugeshon chasim titromam v'kerem kedoshim titan sumam Yisrael, Will rise in body or in spirit as we turn to page 223 for the concluding blessing of Pezuki Zimra, and remain standing through the Chatzi Kaddish and the Baruch Hu in the next two pages. Yishtabach Shimecha Alad Malkeinu Anel HaMelech HaGadol VaHaKadosh VaShamayim UVa'aretz Ki Lecha Nae Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu Ve'imotenu Sherush Bachal B'Zimra U'Zumemshala Netzach Gedula Ukura Tila V'Tiferet Kedusha U'Malchut Brachot ve'hodaot me'ata ve'ad olam Baruch ata Adonai Melech gadol batishmachot el hodaot Adon haniflaot Abocher b'shirei zimra Melech el chei ha'olamim Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah Ve'amad yibrach kirutei v'yamlich malchutei V'chayechonu v'yomechonu v'chayei v'chol Beit Yisrael Ba'agahala u'bizman karib yimeru Amen Yesh ne'raba me'farach Ve'alaham li'almei amayai Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh V'yitadar v'yit'ale v'yit'alal Shemei dekuhucha Ve'ilaham mikol birchata v'shirata Tushmechata v'nechemata Damiram me'alma V'yimeru Amen Barechu et Adonai HaMevorach
Baruch Adonai Hamborah
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Vaed. Please be seated. We're now on page 228, and we'll read together in English at the bottom of the page, and then the 3 lines of Hebrew just above. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, creator of light and darkness, who makes peace and fashions all things. In mercy you illumine the world and those who live upon it. In your goodness you daily renew creation. How numerous are your works, Adonai, in wisdom you form them all, filling the earth with your creatures. Be praised, Adonai, our God, for the excellent work of your hands, and for the lights you created, may they glorify. Shine new light upon Zion, that we all may swiftly merit its radiance. Praised are you, Adonai, creator of all heavenly lights. Or Hadash, Altiyotayir. Or Hadash, Altiyotayir. Veniske kulanu, me'ale oro. Veniske kulanu, me'ale oro. Yadadai dimbam, yadadai dimbam, yadadai dimbam, yadadai. Yadadai dimbam, yadadai dimbam, yadadai dimbam, yadadai. Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer HaMe'orot. We're now on page 230. We'll begin by reading together in English at the top of the page and then the Hebrew at the bottom. How deeply you have loved us, Adonai, our God, gracing us with surpassing compassion. On account of our forebears, whose trust led you to teach them the laws of life, be gracious to us, teaching us as well. O merciful one, have mercy on us by making us able to understand and discern, to heed, learn, and teach, and lovingly to observe, perform, and fulfill all that is in your Torah. Ve'ha'erenu b'toratecha v'dabek libeinu b'mitzvotecha ve'yachvenu le'ahava u'liyirah et shemecha ve'le'nevo ve'lo'ikayim ve'lo'ikayim. Me'arba kanfot haaretz Ve'tolichenu komemiut le'artzeinu ki el poel Yeshuot ata uvanu b'charta ve'keravtanu le'shimcha hagadol sela b'emet le'odot lecha v'yechecha b'yahava baruch atah Adonai abocher b'amo Yisrael b'yahava. Page 232. Shema Yisrael Adonai Adonai Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol yamacha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha ve'hayu advarim ha'ileh Asher Elohim etzarecha hayom al levavecha ve'shinatam levanecha ve'divatam ve'shivtecha ve'veitecha u've'lechtecha b'derech u'shokbecha u'kumecha u'kshartam le'ot ayadecha ve'hayu letotafot beinecha u'ktavtam amezuzot b'kecha Page 236. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe le'or Daber b'nei Yisrael v'asu lahem tzitzit al kanvei dehem le'totam ve'natnu al tzitzit al kanaf v'til techelet ve'haya lahem tzitzit Uritem Usifartem Ekvoitzvot Adonai Nasitem Tam Velot Haturim Asher Tem Zomim Acherim Leman Tiskeru Vasitem Kumitzvotai Vitem Kevoshim Lechem Ani Adonai Lechem Asher Votzei Etchem Mitzrayim Liot Lachem Elohim Ani Adonai Elohim Adonai Elohim Emet. Turn now to page 238, the 4 lines in Hebrew just above where the English begins. Tehillah le'Elyon Baruch Hu mevorach Moshe u'Miriam u'bnei Yisrael lechanu shira v'simcha rabba ve'amru chorah michal b'nei no te'iloto sefele ayin Pirachadasha shimchu ve'ulim ve'shimcha asvatayam yachad kulam hodu ve'imiklu ve'ameru Zor Yisrael, Akuma Bezrat Yisrael, Ufidechenu Mecha Yehuda Yisrael, Kol Aleinu Adonai Tzvaot Shemo, Kedosh Yisrael Baruch Ata Adonai, Gal Yisrael. I invite us now to rise in body or in spirit as we begin the Amidah together on page 242. From that point on, we'll continue silently. As always, please go at your own pace, and when you're finished, you may be seated. Adonai, Sevatai Tiktaku Tehillah. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. We're still happening your sound with Amidah. Please continue at your own pace. Those that are finished, you can join Kevin and myself, page 324. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotzeinu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Yisrael, Elohei עסקים טובים וכל הכל, וזוכר חסרות ויעמוד, ומביא גאולת לבני מה שמודיע מלך עוזר ומשיח ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני מגן חוכמה ועזרה, אתה גיבור לעולם מחייתי מטרה והושיעה, מקים הרוח ומוריד מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ברופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני מלחמות עבר גבורות, ומדומם לנו מלך ממיט ומחיה, ומטמיע תשובה, ונאמרת לחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים. Page 326.
נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב היד נביאך, מקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש קדוש קדוש, אדוני צבאות, מלוך כל הארץ. אדיר אדירנו אדוני אדוננו מאדיר שמך בכל הארץ, ברוך תבוא אדוני במקומו, אחד הוא אלוהינו ואבינו מלכנו ומשיענו והוא ישמיענו ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיך, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, מעמד ציון לדור דור. הללויה. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, יגדול לך. לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, יגדול לך. ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקיש, קדושתך נקיש, ושבחך מפינו. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. Okay, please be seated. And on the top of page 329, just remind me to say this weekend. Next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Top of page 329. Ismechu lemalekotech shomrei 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 Shabbat v'koren olech Shabbat. Ismechu lemalekotech shomrei 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 Shabbat v'koren olech Shabbat. Mekashe shemini Shabbat. Yismechu lemalekutecha, shomrei 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 Shabbat v'koren olech Shabbat. Ratzita bor akina Shabbat. Yismechu lemalekutecha, shomrei 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 Shabbat v'koren olech Shabbat. Zechen maaseh b'nei Shabbat. Zechen maaseh b'nei Shabbat.
Yismechu v'malechutecha, shomrei, 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 shalom, v'korei odonei shalom.
Eloheinu, Imoteinu, Ritzei, Vimnuchateinu, Kadesheinu, Bamitzvoteinu, V'tein chelkeinu, V'torateinu, Shabbat, Shabbat Kodeshecha, Yanukuvam, Israel, Mikdash, Shemecha, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mekadesh, Mekadesh, Mekadesh.
Yeshua. That's like a mini high holiday. Fantastic. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh Shabbat. Yeshua. All right, page 330. We'll read together in English. On this Shabbat day, as you graciously receive our prayers, help us to hear your call. Grant us enough help to fulfill our duties and the compassion we need to attend to others. Teach us humility that we may perceive our own faults, and grant us the wisdom to be forgiving to others. Give us the courage to be true to our highest selves and the charity to see the best in those around us. Give us patience enough not to become discouraged, hope enough to overcome all fears for the future, faith enough to know your presence. O source of blessing, look with favor upon us. May our offerings be acceptable to you. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otcha levatcha b'yadav. We'll turn now to page 332 at the very bottom of the page. For the expanding grandeur of creation, worlds known and unknown, galaxies beyond galaxies, filling us with awe and challenging our imaginations. For this fragile planet Earth, its times and tides, its sunsets and seasons. For the joy of human life, its wonders and surprises, its hopes and achievements. For human community, our common past and future hope, our oneness transcending all separation, our capacity to work for peace and justice in the midst of hostility and oppression. For high hopes and noble causes, for faith without fanaticism, for understanding of views not shared. For all who have labored and suffered for a fairer world, who have lived so that others might live in dignity and freedom. For human liberties and sacred rights, for opportunities to change and grow, to affirm and choose. We pray that we may live not by our fears, but by our hopes, not by our words, but by our deeds. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha v'chaneh leodo. Sim Shalom, page 334. Sim Shalom, tova ubracha, ben v'tesem v'achanim v'achanim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol Yisrael, amen. Orkeinu yosrein, kulanu kereva, ve'or planeh, even upon Sim Shalom, Tova Ubracha, Ben V'Tesem V'Achanim V'Achanim Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Amen. Torah Chaim Me'ahavat Chesed Ve'avat Chesed U'Tzedakah Ve'Rachamim Chaim Ve'Shalom. Sim Shalom Tova Ubracha, Ben V'Tesem V'Achanim V'Achanim Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Al Kol Yisrael Amecha, V'tov Einecha Levarech, Et Lamcha Yisrael, V'kol Eilu V'kol Yad, Yishtameh. Sim Shalom, Ben V'Tesem V'Achanim V'Achanim Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Shema Yisrael, V'Shalom. Let's read together on the bottom of page 336. I need strength, humility, courage, patience. Strength to control my passions, humility to assess my own worth, courage to rise above defeats, patience to cleanse myself of imperfections, and wisdom to learn and live by our sacred teachings. Let me not be discouraged by my failings. Let me take heart from all that is good and noble in my character. Keep me from falling victim to cynicism. Teach me sincerity and enthusiasm. Endow me with perception and courage, that I may serve others with compassion and love. Oh, say shalom b'me'olam, u'yaseh shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol yoshveitem, yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Good Shabbos, everybody. Good Shabbos. Yeah, that really was spectacular, and that's great. All right, you can take a little bit of a rest. All right, good Shabbos, everybody. So this morning, in a little bit, we're going to read from Parshat Bo. Parshat Bo contains within it the last 3 of the 10 plagues, and which are horrific to say the very least. And then we get a really interesting description, of which we'll probably go into more detail in Torah study, about the preparations ultimately for the Exodus itself, which include the Pesach sacrifice, the offering of basically the thing in place of us, which is really what it does in terms of protecting the Jewish people while the rest of Egypt is suffering. And in that sacrifice of putting blood on the lintel, as we may remember from the Pesach story, it's, as I said, it can be a very challenging parsha to study, in which we'll probably get into greater detail, as I said, in Torah study a little bit later. I want to focus actually on the end of the parsha. So if you have a Green Women's Commentary Torah, we're really looking at chapter 13, it's on page 370. Laura, I think we have 2 copies there. Sue can help you out with one of those. I think it should be either a green one or a black one, whichever you prefer. Perfect. That's a good one. If you have the darker colored one, that's page 370. And if you have the darker colored one, it's page 450. 415 in this one, and 370 the lens count. So what we have at the end of the version is a few different things that are kind of taking place in order, but they're all actually very relevant. And there's one phrase and even one word that I want to really get to and focus on. But what we see at the beginning is this idea, right? Adonai speaks further to Moses saying, Kadesh li kol bechor, right? To consecrate to me every male firstborn, human and beast. The first male issue of every womb amongst the Israelites is mine. So this may be familiar to some of you, less familiar to others. Anybody know what a pidyon haben is other than Kevin? Come up before? Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. David, it's ever. Very good, very good. So a pidyon haben is basically a redemption of the firstborn. So technically speaking, the firstborn male issue, right, of every Jewish mother is meant to be consecrated to God, which can be understood in a lot of different kinds of ways. But the system basically developed eventually where rather than actually giving the child over, for example, to service to the temple or whatever it might be, that the family essentially redeems them. You know, we think of the word redemption or redeeming and usually with coupons and things of that nature. But the main idea is that you're essentially buying back something, right? You're taking something of your own and you're placing something in its place so that you can have the thing that you actually want. So the pidyon haben has become a less frequent thing in my experience. It's very rarely done in most Reform communities that I'm aware of, but it's very commonly practiced in the Orthodox world. And in the Sephardic world in particular, I think has several different things that are done. But it's really all related to this sort of balancing act of, you know, as the striking down of the firstborn of the Egyptians, there is sort of a element here, right? That the thing that saves us, even though really everybody else is being killed, is that we are being chosen for this, you know, task, this responsibility of being God's chosen people, and that we are in the end still obligated to God in some form or the other, but that it takes a different kind of place. So it's less what I want to focus on this morning. And next is really the section that's more interesting to me. We get into this conversation ultimately about what is meant to happen when we get into the land of Israel, and the celebration of really a Pesach as a holiday, the establishing of Pesach as a holiday. One very unusual piece of it, though, I'll just see if anybody catches it. Verse 6. Okay, 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, and on the 7th day there shall be a festival of Adonai. Does anything strike you as odd about that? We're talking about the holiday of Pesach. Does anything strike you as odd about that? Very good. Now, what days of the week are we talking about? Or what day of the cycle is there a festival? Well, not exactly, but end of, right? But keep thinking. So when you have your seders on Pesach, when do you have it? Right, beginning of the holiday, okay, not the end of the holiday. So it's an interesting reason as to why that's the case here. We'll go into that more detail into our study. Eventually, it's understood that the beginning and the end of the holiday are both the festival parts of it. But here we get something that seems to indicate that really the festival part is really at the end, not at the beginning. Can you posit any reason why that might be the case? Well, think about the Pesach celebration as a reenactment of the Exodus itself. Okay, could you have a festival gathering in the story on the first night? No. Right? You're in the process of, you know, in essence, the Exodus itself. So there is some logic to that, but eventually it gets sort of codified in a different way. But that's, believe it or not even where I really want to focus this morning. Building up to something, it's really, actually, I think one of the most important commandments, and I should say actually that this section is where we get some of the first mitzvot, some of the first actual commandments of God to the Israelite people, to eventually the Jewish people. Everything prior to this is really conversations again between God and, you know, Abraham and his children, all these things. But here now we're really talking on a kind of national level, and we're being really instructed, right? As soon as we get into the land of Israel, we establish this holiday for its main purpose, which is to remember that this whole Exodus happened. that God redeemed the children of Israel, brought them into the land of milk and honey, as we're told. And as a result of it, we're going to have this sort of celebration. But then we get in verse 8, what I think is actually one of the most important of all of our mitzvot. Even though it is sort of narrowly focused here, it is reflective of a larger concept within Judaism. Vehigadata levincha b'yom hahu lemor ba'avor zeh asa Adonai li b'tzeitim miMitzrayim. So you shall explain to your child on that day, right, when you're celebrating in the land of Israel and you've gotten out of the land of Egypt and you're free from slavery. When you get there, Higadata levincha, that you shall explain to your child on that day, it's because of what God did for me when I went free from Egypt. Okay, so first thing, does anybody know one part of the Seder that this particularly references or has a relationship to? This is something that deep cuts, I wouldn't expect. Think of the 4 children. Okay, all right, so one of the 4 children is known as the Rasha. The Rasha is usually translated as the wicked child, but really the rabbis understand it actually as a child who probably needs a little bit of help for perspective, and context. And what you say is that this is what God did for me, right? Asa Adonai li b'tzeitim miMitzrayim, and not for you, because if you had been there in that time, you wouldn't have been redeemed because you have this sort of nasty attitude about life. But that to me is not actually the most important part of it. The most important part is the first word, the higadata. So the rabbis explain that actually this is a very unusual choice of words. The normal choice of words here would be, any guesses? Something in the Omer range, right? Lemor, right? The Hebrew has many different words for telling people things, but generally speaking, if you're just going to be talking to your children, you'd use lemor. It would be a much more logical choice. Higadata, however, takes on a different kind of connotation. Here it's used as explain, in some cases used as proclaim, but one of the rabbis in the commentary, and I'm forgetting which one off the top of my head, points out that there actually is a hidden word in this, the word gid, gimel dalet. Does that ring any bells to anybody? This one, again, I'd be shocked. I'm looking at Kevin just because I feel like maybe. So not so long ago, we read a story about our ancestor Jacob, and Jacob is wrestling with the angel. The angel goes right here into what? Anybody remember? In Hebrew, it's called the gid hanasheh. It's essentially the sciatic nerve. It's a tendon in the hip joint. So the word higadata contains this word gid, which implies a tendon. Okay, so this is getting a little strange, but rabbis explain. In the same way that a tendon is extremely rigid, hard, right? And it's also a connecting element to it. When you're speaking to your child about this story, you need to speak to them with a certain kind of hardness in your voice. You need to speak with them with a certain kind of authority. Because if you tell this to them like a fairy tale, right, as something that sort of happened and it's something that's a story to tell them to go to sleep or whatever it might be, it becomes fanciful. It becomes a story that basically has almost no direct connection. It seems as if it happened to some other group of people some other time. But by speaking to them with a certain firmness, with a certain resolute nature to it, with a certain emphasis on how important this story is, you bind and connect your child to this long legacy and towards this connection of the experience of our ancestors who were freed, so that we ourselves, is one of the key understandings of the Seder itself, is to see ourselves as if we had gone out from Egypt in this generation. And so I think, as I said, this is a phrase that's very specific to this one pasuk and this one idea, but it becomes actually a paradigm for Jewish pedagogy throughout the ages, in the ways in which we speak, in particular to our children, in the ways in which we impart what are sometimes hard conversations, but important ones. And that while we could just say the thing, right, tell the story, there are, again, other Hebrew words that would convey that. Choosing this word, says the rabbis, is implying a hidden message here, a hidden teaching. One that I think actually, in their case, really applies much more broadly than just at the story of the Exodus, but actually much more broadly than that. And if I can find it, there's a great Heschel quote in the Amidah. Let's see if I can find it there somewhere. Right. Page 251 in your prayer book, if you want to look along. I'll just point out to everybody that in our prayer book, they don't always give attributions in the page itself as to where these quotes are coming from, but in the back of the book, you can look up based on the page what the citation is. And so Heschel says that we are a people in whom the past endures, in whom the present is inconceivable without moments gone by. The Exodus lasted a moment enduring forever. What happened once upon a time happens all the time. So thinking again and sort of connecting this phrase to that idea of the sort of, the tendon explanation, as it were. Like I said, it's not just a matter of approaching the conversation with a certain hardness or rigidity, but it's also about the connecting nature of tendons, right? A human body without tendons doesn't function, just can't work. Anybody who's hurt a tendon in your body will know it's one of the more painful things that you can experience and one of the more devastating things that you can't fix it properly. But it is, in the end, one of the pieces that holds us all together. And I think that the way in which we as Jews speak about our past, as Heschel says, is on the one hand about the past, but also about the present, also about the future. That connecting line that pulls us all through. And without that, ultimately, we fall apart. And so the instruction here, the reason why the commandments are so important in this space is not just about a holiday that you're going to celebrate sometime in the future. There is a real concern implicit in the language that says, if you don't do this, if you don't make sure that every year you retell the story, if you don't make sure that you teach your children with a seriousness about our story and our history and our legacy, what we went through, what we overcame, what we ultimately have and are grateful for now, if you don't do these things, then you will fall apart. It won't matter if I, God, bring you to the land of Israel, you will fall apart. So this becomes one of the first linchpins of the Jewish people, is this narrative, is this story, is the one that we not only retell actually every Pesach, but we basically retell it every Shabbat. It's part of our liturgy, it's part of our brachot, it's part of the Kiddush, right? The Exodus story is so deeply embedded in who we are, but it is not accidental. It has a purpose, it has an intention, and it has a reminder to us, A, of what it means to suffer, B, what it means to be free, and C, what it means to be grateful. And I think these three things are really the foundation of what it means to be part of the Jewish people, and it begins in this moment and in this parsha. So with that, I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom. Probably never think about the word tendon the same way ever again. That's for sure. And just a reminder, when we do start reading, we're going to be reading first 10 verses of chapter 13. So that's in page 370 in the women's commentary. And well, it's probably yes, 4:15. Very good, thank you, Marsha. In the Plav Chumash. And before we get to any of that, we'll go to our prayer books to bring in Seder Kriyat Torah. And Cantor, you want to join me for the opening part here?
And that's on 362.
362. 362. Many thanks. Ein kamocha Elohim Adonai, ve'in k'maaseh, malchut Shema, malchut Olam, u'v'shavtecha b'kol Adonai. Adonai Oslecho Yitein, Adonai Ma'aseh, V'tavo V'ashar. Iti Chavetzoncha Et Zion, Tivnei Komot Yerushalayim. Kitzion Tetzei Torah, Kitzion Tetzei Torah, Udevar Yerushalayim Baris Shenatan Torah Le'amo Yisrael V'Kedushato Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Gadol Shemo. Echad Eloheinu Gadol Gadol Shemo. Galulan Haiti Oneonema Shemo Yachtav
Lecha Adonai hagedula ve'hagedula ככל השמיים ובארץ, ככל השמיים ובארץ, לך להעמיד נעשה עולמו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו וישתחוו להקדשו. רוממו אדוני אלוהינו וישתחוו להקדשו.
Okay, please be seated, everyone. Then we're going to read the first 10 verses of chapter 13. Anybody would like an aliyah? Yeah. Anybody? I kind of feel like picking on Strasser because he's been to Saudi Arabia. I can't imagine the last time I gave somebody a aliyah that went to Saudi Arabia. You're not. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. So, sure. Good. Great. Okay. So you can do it from there if you'd like. You guys are really good. Really good. I'm impressed. Okay. Tamod. Remind me your name. The Hebrew name. Sarah Bat Zissel Lai. Lalia Harishona. Baruch Adonai Borach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai Borach Leolam Vaed. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachapanu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe lemor. Kadesh lichol bechor. Heter kol rechem bibnei Israel. Ba'adam uvehaimam lihum. Vayomer Moshe el ha'am. Zachor et hayom hazeh asher yetzatem mitzrayim mibeit avadim ki bechozek yad hotzi Adonai etchem mizeh velo ye'achel chametz hayom atem yotzim בחודש האביב והיה כי יביאך אדוני אל ארץ הכנענים והחיתי והאמורי והחיבי והיבוסי אשר נשבע לאבותיך לתת לך ארץ זבת חלב ודבש ועבדת את העבודה הזאת בחודש הזה 7 ימים תאכל מצות וביום השביעי חג לאדוני מצות יאכל את 7 הימים ולא יראה לך חמץ, ולא יראה לך שעור בכל גבולך, והגדת לבנך ביום ההוא לאמור, בעבור זה עשה אדוני לי לצאתי ממצרים, והיה לך להות על ידך ולזיכרון בין עיניך למען תהיה תורת אדוני בפיך כי ביד חזקה הוציאך אדוני ממצרים ושמרת
ושמרת את החוקה הזאת, למועדם מימים ימימה.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan לנו תורת אמת, וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. Baruch atah Adonai נותן התורה.
Amen. Yashka, Sue. Thank you. So as a, just one aside, I have to actually call the old man and ask him this, but for years I've been wondering how the son of a conservative rabbi could be named Peter. And I couldn't figure it out for the life of me forever. And now I think I actually have a theory. Because the word in Hebrew that is closest to Peter is Peter. And Peter is a reference to the first issuing of the womb. In other words, the first male child that is born. He's an only child. This is my going theory at the moment. My grandfather, unfortunately, not alive anymore to ask the question, but I now have at least a theory of it, which I really think would be fascinating if I'm right. I'll report back. I'll let you know. Before we, where did I put it? Our Mishnah Berurah, our healing prayer this morning. So we'll take an opportunity to think of those that we are directly connected to, but certainly, of course, this morning we're also thinking after the attack in Israel yesterday in Jerusalem, and thinking and praying for healing as well in the state of Israel and for the families that were most directly affected. Mishaberach Avotenu v'Imotenu Abraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov Sarar Rivka Rachel v'Leah v'Yivarech et hacholim ha'elu. We're thinking this morning in our community of Bentzi Tepper, Allison Luckman, Malka Bat Chaya Sura, Michael Klinghoffer, Amy Cass, Warren Cass, Rivka Bat Rachel, Leah Bat Naomi, Gedalia Ben Sylvia, Lorraine Danis, David Dowling, Sylvia Devorah Bat Francis, Muriel Hirsch, Michelle Sawicki, Francis Kirschman, Shelley Newmark, Diane Axelrod, Gabriella Spicer, Barbara Kushner, David Klopman, Lorraine Davis, Michael Ben Hanania, Devorah Batsima, Rebecca Snyder, Jeffrey Miller, Shelley Lyman, Deborah Block-Kroll, Sylvia Oren, Stanley Rappaport, Karen Layton, Debbie Booklar, Carol Jobna, Lori Nisanoff, Roberta Kyle, Miriam Batchaya, Dina Batchana, Mindy Cantor, Rebecca Rubin, and Miriam Levy. In addition to the names that we just read, if anyone has other names to share.
Louis Simon, Matt Callahan, and Peter Stevenson. I looked with Laura, please find changing, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I apologize for
You can have the Ashley and Maddie, Mary Moore, Rena and Mike Spinito, John Graham, Jody Carlson, Michael Brockett, Michelle, Mario, David Danziger, Selena, Gary Short, Danielle, Tom Jackson, Alma and Aaron Stapleton, Louise D. and Vivian Shredder.
Hakadosh Baruch Hu Yimalei Rachamim Alehem Lachalimam L'Rabbatam L'Chazikam V'Yishlach Lehem Mehera Refuah Refuah Shlema Min HaShamayim Refuah HaNefesh Refuah HaGuf Hashta B'Galav Zman Karev V'Nomar Amen. May the one who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah bless and heal those who are suffering. May the blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored, their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit, and let us say together. Amen. Amen. El Refana La
Refana Refuah Shelema Refana Lo
Will now rise in body or spirit as the Torah is lifted and dressed. On the bottom of page 307. Yeah. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe,
Okay, please be seated, everybody. Good reminder that Bob Shiraz next week, so
Look at that.
something to think about. So this morning, we're very lucky that we'll get a little bit of our chanting this week from the cantor. Do you want me to read the English afterwards?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you'll do the bracha.
I can
Okay, great. So.
Wait a minute. But it should be fine. That should be fine.
So Haftarah this morning is on page 427 if you have this colored one. Otherwise, you can just listen. Listening is good. Page 427, cantor, it's yours, and then off from there.
Fantastic. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'neviim tovim v'ratza v'divreihem hane'marim ba'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'torah u'Moshe avdo u'Yisrael amo ובנביאי האמת והצדק. הדבר אשר דיבר אדוני אל ירמיהו הנביא לבוא נבוכדרצר מלך בבל להכות את ארץ מצרים, הגידו במצרים, והשמיעו במגדול, והשמיעו בנוף, ותחפנכס, אמרו, התייצב, והכן לך, כי אוכלה חרב סביבך, מדוע נסחף אבירך, לא עמד, כי אדוני הדפון הרבה, פושל גם נפל, איש אל רעהו, ויאמרו קומה ונשובה אל עמנו, אל ארץ מולדתנו, מפני חרב היונה.
Picking up with verse 17. There they called Pharaoh, king of Egypt, big noise, who has missed his chance. As I live, says the Eternal One, the sovereign God of heaven's hosts, as Tabor is among the mountains, as Carmel is by the sea, so shall Nebuchadnezzar come. Pack your bags for exile, fair Egypt, dwelling so safe and sound. Memphis will become a desolation and uninhabited ruin. Egypt is a lovely heifer upon whom a gadfly from the north has descended. Even the mercenaries in her midst were like fatted calves, for they too have turned and fled as one, making no stand. For the day of disaster has come upon them, their hour of doom. Hear her hiss like a snake when the Babylonians come in force to attack her with axes like woodchop. Says the Eternal One, they cut down her forest, impenetrable though it is, for they outnumber the locusts and cannot be counted. Fair Egypt shall be put to shame, given over to a northern people. The God of heaven's host, the God of Israel says, behold, I punish Ammon, God of the town of No, and Pharaoh the Egypt, her gods and her kings, Pharaoh and all who trust him. I am handing them over to those who seek their lives, to Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon and his army. But later on it will be inhabited as in days of old. That is the word of the Eternal. But you have no fear, Jacob, my servant, do not despair, O Israel, for behold, I will save you from that distant place, and your offspring from the land of captivity. Jacob shall return and be quiet and tranquil, and none shall make you afraid. Have no fear, O Jacob, my servant, for I am with you, says the Eternal. I'll bring to an end all the nations to whose land I have driven you, but I will not make an end of you. though I do not let you go unpunished. I will chastise you justly. We'll return now back to our prayer books. You want me to do the closing blessing? Okay, page 372 at the very bottom. Baruch atah Elohim Tzur kol ha'elohim tzadik bechol adorot ha'eman ha'omer v'seh hamdaber u'mikayem shekol ra'ah v'met ha'tzedek ha'latorah ve'ahavdah ve'alehi v'yom ha'shabbat hazeh shenatata לנו Elohim לקדושה ונפלאה, בכבוד ותפארת, על הכל אדוני אלוהינו, אנחנו מודים לך, מברכים אותך, יתברך שמך ופיכוחי, תמיד לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני, מקדש השחר. I think it's one of the all-time great lines in the Haftarah, calling Pharaoh big noise who has missed his chance.
That's a great line.
I'm gonna hold that one in my back pocket for an occasion in the future. Right? Either a real insult for somebody, I suppose that's it.
Good job, big noise.
Big noise, good job. Okay, in all seriousness, we'll turn to page 376. We'll offer first a prayer for our country at the bottom of the page. O guardian of life and liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Teach us to give thanks for what we have by sharing it with those who are in need. Keep our eyes open to the wonders of creation and alert to the care of the earth. May we never be lazy in the work of peace. May we honor those who have died in defense of our ideals. Grant our leaders wisdom and forbearance. May they govern with justice and compassion. Help us all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife, and our country be sound in body and spirit, and let us stay together. Amen. And a much needed prayer for the state of Israel, page 377, and we'll begin at the top of the page this morning. Pray for the peace of Yerushalayim. May those who love you prosper. O Heavenly One, protector and redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love, spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. And together we say, Amen. Turn back to page 374 as we conclude the Torah service, beginning at the top of the page. Yeah, hallelujah, Shem Adonai, Kisam Shem Right now, Israel hallelujah. Lama chazima v'toche ha'merushar teracheha darchei noam v'kol tivoteha shalom hashiveinu Remain standing or rise as we turn to page 586 at the bottom of the page. Aleinu l'shabbat. Aleinu l'shabbat l'adon hakol v'kedula v'yotzer b'reshit shelo asanu k'goyei ha'aratzot v'lo samanu k'mishpatot ha'ama shelo sam chelkenu kahem v'gor aleinu k'chol amunam ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא ביום יהיה אדוני Invite those in mourning and those observing yard site to please remain standing. Everyone else may be seated at this time. We think first of those who passed in our community in recent months: Martin Blake, Arlene Eber, Chaim Bear Greenwald, Sandy Greenwald, Jane Beard Cass, Gertrude Katz, Buddy Kossoff, Pauline Krotman, Emmanuel Kiprios, David Lieberman, Sandra Luongo, Norma Paulsek, Marvin Schreier, Anita Sheldon, Alan Silver, Sandy Slip, Larry Wartor, Rita Weitzman, Matthew Adam Zimmerman, and Yael Zerdar. We also mark the yard sites that occurred for Daniel Bernstein, Janet Blum, Judith Brandenburg, Beatrice Barak, Solomon Cohen, Lynn Cowan, Yale Gelman, Rose Katz Grossman, Stanley Hemley, Ruth Hessa, Terry Katz, May Kelman, Jack Klitnick, Joseph Krennick, Barnett Kruger, Samuel Marks, Kate Okun, Murray Potashik, Mary Racklin, Abraham Riskin, Meyer Ritbo, Beverly Bronick, Alan Saltzman, Lola Snyder, Frida Tarlow, Peter Weinstein, Vicky Paul, and Dorothy Klein. In addition to the names that we just read, does anyone else think Kaddish for anyone you'd like to mention?
Thanks, Karen. Last one to pull that on and Bertha X and Mary.
Invite the mourners to join with me on page 598. Yitkadal v'yikadash shemei Rabbah, ve'almad v'rach irtei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon u'v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ha'agalau v'zman kariv v'yimru amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah v'barach la'alam v'yamei almai, yitbarach v'yishavach v'yitpahar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitale v'yithalal shemei Yekusha v'ritku. Leila min kol gerchata v'shirata, tush b'chata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom v'mumav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. May every one of their memories be blessed. Okay, please be seated, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. Just a few quick announcements before we do Kiddush and we'll break for a little bit. First is to remind everyone that Torah study will begin on Zoom at 12 o'clock, so you're welcome to join us for that. Also a reminder that tomorrow, Ruth Joseph's book group will be meeting virtually on Zoom at 11 o'clock. Again, that's tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock. If you haven't signed up yet and you're interested and you'd like to get in touch with Ruth, you can let us know in the office and we'll make that connection. And we'll be happy to set that up, but we're very excited that the group is being able to meet at this time of the year, and I'm sure some very interesting conversation will come from it. Also a reminder, this Wednesday, February 1st, will be our next in the Film Shul series. This one is titled Straight Outta Brooklyn, focusing on, in particular, the actors and comedians that were born, raised, and ultimately learned of themselves in the borough of Brooklyn. Not my first go-to place. You a Brooklyn person? No, not a you a Brooklyn person? Yeah, you're Colorado.
Yeah,
but
sure.
But there are many things we can certainly appreciate. This is my Manhattan snobbery coming out. But you know, at the end of the day, comedy in particular, you really have to give credit where it's due. You know, they actually, it didn't say here, but you know, when we've done these cultural things, these guys go really far. Like they find kind of everybody. You know, the one for me is Mel Brooks, obviously, is the starting point. I think Carl Renner also, if I'm not mistaken. But then they all, yeah, no, but then they go to California and it changes. But you know, but in any case, it's a really great program that we've been having, and really hope everyone will be able to join us. And also just a reminder, on Monday, Nimitz will be meeting at 11:30 in the morning on Zoom, just on Zoom. Okay, nobody's around. Fair enough. Okay, so that's good to know. Nina Mitzvah group on Zoom until we're back in the temple. Then that would be great though. On Monday mornings we'll come back and be hanging out on the social.
Maybe I'll.
No, I was telling Kevin that I understand. I understand. Okay, well, hopefully that will all work itself out.
Yeah.
For the positive. My Heschel class at 12 o'clock on Monday on Zoom, Hebrew school at 3 o'clock, and the Social Justice Committee's regular meeting as well. I think that's everything for me. Can't is good. Good. Welcome back. And hello to all of our friends watching at home. So we'll end with probably Yigdal this morning. I've actually done that in a while, and then we'll do Kiddush. Page 628. Yigdal Elohim Chai, V'yishtabach Nimtzach Yeinen El Mitziuto, Echad Ve'yachid Yehudo, Nelam V'gam Ein Sof Le'achduto, Ein Lo Dmut Haguf Ve'eino Guf, Lo Na'aroch Elav Kedushato, Kadmon L'chol Davar Asher Nivra, Rishon ben Reshit leReshito, Hino Adon Olam lechol notzar, Yoreh Gulato Malchuto, Shefad Huato Netan Oel, Anshe Zulato V'tifarto, Lo kan b'Yisrael kemo she'od, Navi u'madbid et munato, Torah Temet Natan le'am Oel, Agad Nevi'on Eman Beito, Lo Yachal Yifael, Lo Yamid Atov, Le'olamim Lezulato, Sofer Yodea Setarenu, Mabit L'sof Davar Bekadmato, Gomer Leish Chesed Kemifalo, Noten Rasha Ra Le'Grishato, Yishlach L'Ketz Yamin Bedut Olam, Kol Chai Yeshakir Yeshuato, Chaye Olam Nata Betocheinu, Baruch Le'ad Shem Tehilato, Chaye Olam Nata Betocheinu, Baruch Le'ad Shem Tehilato. It will rise for Kiddush on page 604. Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, ledot ha-berit olam, beini u'bein b'nei Yisrael, oti le'olam, oti le'olam. Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, ledot ha-berit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim ve'et ha'aretz, veshamru b'nei Yisrael ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, ledot ha-berit olam. Uvayom hashvi Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash, Shabbat vayinafash, Veshamru b'nei Yisrael ha-Shabbat, et ha-Shabbat, ledot ha-berit olam. Al ken berach Adonai yom ha-Shabbat vayikadshehu savri. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei b'ri hagafen. Amen. Shabbat shalom. Looking forward to when we can actually give you guys some of this stuff.
Karopi Amenu.
Karopi news, they say, soon in our days. Looks.
So this is what the Zoom looks like.
Good to see everyone online. How are we doing?
I don't know. No, I don't know why that happened. Unless somebody
Good to see you.
touched my computer.
I don't know either, just let me know
No,
that.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Donna. That's because again, the way that this is set up, it's
Good.
literally running off of my computer up here.
I realized that, I'm just saying I didn't know.
No, but that's not the way it's supposed to.
So there was about 9 of us, but
Good job. No, that obviously changes the whole thing.
What's going on with that? I don't
I don't know, but now you can see the analytics and,
But the
Eric.
website is fine.
Good job, everybody.